In the PSL sphere, many people would have you believe that looking better always results in you being perceived more positively by females without any caveats. Having observed the dating market over the past 10 years, I've noticed a trend lately where dating is getting increasingly harder for average and even above average looking men. Yet the amount of below average looking men that I'm seeing in relationships with girls who are average and above average looking isn't decreasing, but actually seems to be increasing. This is a phenomenon that I've coined as looks purgatory, and in this video I'm going to explain the looks purgatory concept to you. While I call it looks purgatory, it could be expanded to looks and behavior purgatory, but I will start with the looks aspect first, as that is the most apparent aspect of the theory. In recent years, the term oofy-doofy has popped up to refer to men who supposedly disprove the black pill, with oofy-doofies generally being described as low-sentience normies who are average or below average in looks, but are still able to find relationships just by going with the flow and not trying too hard in life. You can have oofy-doofies who are jesters, which makes them tryhards by definition, but many just don't think too much or try too much as they drift through life. I'm not going to use the term oofy-doofies any further in this video, since other content creators may have a different definition which will cause confusion, but I will simply refer to the guys I just described as sub-average males. This means a theoretical 49th percentile male is a sub-average male. So what does it mean to be in looks purgatory? Being in looks purgatory means that you have a level of physical attractiveness where you are good-looking enough to not be seen as a safe LTR option by your looks match, but you also aren't good-looking enough to be seen as worth giving a one-night stand to by your looks match. In looks purgatory, you're at a level of attractiveness where you can have first meeting slays with girls beneath your looks level, but girls of your own looks level generally don't think there is enough reward to getting involved with you short-term, since they can offer those one-night stands to better-looking guys. But they also don't think it's worth getting involved with you long-term, because they recognize that you have enough SMV where it's not a huge deal for you to leave them, meaning you're a less secure option than if they go for a guy who is below their looks level. If we say that looks purgatory begins at 50th percentile and ends before you reach chadlight, then we can say that looks purgatory extends roughly from 50th to 95th percentile. If we say chadlight is where being objectively attractive starts, then 1 in 20 or 95th percentile will work for a rough percentile for chadlight, even if new gens argue that it's rarer. Looks purgatory doesn't have to start at exactly 50th percentile, but for the sake of the sub-average male's definition, that's where I will start it, even if there is some overlap below 50th percentile. You might ask if I'm suggesting that 45% of men fall within a looks zone where they are underperforming relative to their looks level. And yes, that is what I'm suggesting. Let's take a high-tier Becky, for example. If she feels like having a one-night stand that's based solely on physical attraction, she knows that she could easily find a high-tier normie to sleep with, but she would rather shop around for the best option, so she will sleep with a Chad if she can find one, or a Chadlight if she can't find a Chad. The Chad and Chadlight thus benefit from not being in looks purgatory, since they receive casual sex with a high-tier Becky. And pretty much every guy considers a high-tier Becky as passing their looks threshold for an enjoyable slay. If a high-tier Becky is looking for a relationship, she will still give casual sex to Chads and Chadlights, in the hopes she can develop a friends with benefits situation which she can later turn into a relationship. She will probably be aware that she can't convince a Chad or Chadlight to go on multiple dates and agree to commitment without offering sex, so she has to offer sex up front. But even if she fails to secure a relationship, she will still consider a pump and dump from a Chad or Chadlight to be worthwhile because they're above her level, whereas if she offered up sex to a high-tier normie in the hopes of developing a relationship but got pumped and dumped, it would be much more damaging to her ego. Let's say a high-tier Becky does end up in a relationship with a Chad or Chadlight. She will know that he will have other options, so she's at risk of her Chad or Chadlight boyfriend cheating on her or dumping her for another girl, which will make her feel like she doesn't have much relationship security. But she will feel it's worth paying that price to get to live a life where she has a Chad or Chadlight boyfriend, which may feel like a fantasy for her. If she was to get a relationship with her high-tier normie looks match, he wouldn't have as many other options as a Chad or Chadlight, but he would still have enough value where it isn't unlikely that he could cheat on her or replace her with another girl. If she was in a relationship with a high-tier normie, he would actually benefit massively from the pre-selection halo of having a girlfriend, and suddenly girls who would have had doubts about how attractive they'd deem him when he was single would consider him attractive when they see he was able to get a high-tier Becky girlfriend. So if the high-tier Becky dates a Chad or Chadlite, she doesn't boost their value because they're already seen as having value, and because she's of a lower looks level than them, it's not viewed as a halo for them. If the high-tier Becky is in a relationship with her looks match, she boosts his perceived attractiveness because he's in an in-between zone where it's up for debate how attractive he is, and pre-selection halo with proof of a girlfriend boosts his perceived attractiveness massively. If the high-tier Becky is in a relationship with a sub-average male, who's on the left side of the looks purgatory bell curve, he doesn't receive a boost in perceived attractiveness from this because even though it should work as pre-selection halo in theory, other girls can see from the looks discrepancy that she is in a relationship with him because he's the safe LTR option for her who won't leave, not because he has some hidden value that can make up for the large looks discrepancy.
I'm into like medium ugly guys, I'd say. Not you though, you're really handsome.
Why are you with me then?
No, I think you're really handsome.
Why are you with me?
Because you are a bit medium ugly. You have got lazy eye.
I'm medium ugly.
Well, I'm not good looking, so.
Am I medium ugly?
No, you're really handsome.
You never say nice things about me anymore.
In recent years, there's been a trend online where girls speak about giving an ugly guy a chance, only to have him treat them as if he's good-looking or they're the ugly one, thus negating the advantage they assumed they would have in the relationship by choosing an ugly guy.
All that work and what did it get me? Why did I do it?
The fact that girls openly express that they expect different behavior from an ugly guy in a relationship than they expect from an attractive guy shows that the primary reason for girls selecting sub-average males is so that they will have more control in the relationship than they had with an attractive guy. The give an ugly guy a chance trend shows how shocking it is for girls when this doesn't turn out to be the case. If an above-average looking girl is willing to get into a relationship with a sub-average male despite having countless attractive males available to her in the modern dating market, she is effectively practicing anti-eugenics because she thinks the expected behavior the sub-average male will exhibit will be worth the trade-off in looks. This shows that having perceived relationship security and predictable partner behavior is worth so much to some girls that they will date a sub-average male simply because they are the only males who they feel certain won't have any other options, so won't be willing to leave them.
Would you rather date someone out of your league or below your league?
Below my league. I think out of my league, you would feel very insecure the whole time and just think that you're not good enough.
Below, 100%.
Really? Why?
I don't know, my mom just always said that, like, you should just have, like, it's just better to know that, like, you're secure and, like, you just love them. But, like, my boyfriend now, it's like, he's just the best, and, like, we're just equals.
Love it. Good save.
I have spoken to someone before who said his sister met the description of an above-average looking girl who could easily get an attractive man to commit to her, but because of her insecurity and control-freak nature, she would actively pursue sub-average males who she encountered and would get excited by the fact that they would have absolutely no other options available. Funnily enough, she still ended up getting burned in the relationships by these subhumans, which is to be expected, since subhuman looks are so often accompanied by subhuman mental capacity and behavioral patterns such as genes come in packages theory. In 2025, there are high-tier normies out there with zero dating options, but because it isn't automatically assumed by the girls they meet that they are optionless, they will never be pursued as the safe option for a relationship by girls who are out of their looks league. Someone might ask, wouldn't a Stacy getting in a relationship with a high-tier normie be the equivalent of a high-tier Becky getting in a relationship with a low-tier normie for security and control reasons? And the answer to this is no, because it's not just about the guy being lower on the look scale than the girl, but it's also about the guy not being attractive enough to have other options or benefit from the pre-selection halo that dating a hot girl will bring him. Upper mid-tier normie and high-tier normie are where these effects are most pronounced. A Stacy with a standard mid-tier normie is a case where the guy falls outside the looks purgatory range and is low enough on the looks scale to benefit from the lower looks level by getting a relationship with a girl out of his league. You might ask, why would this even be a good thing to be on the left side of the looks purgatory zone if it means that the girl you're in a relationship with has chosen you for security rather than seeing you as the best option physically? Isn't it just beta buxing at that point? If you are a sub-average male, the best-looking girl you'll be able to get who will see you as her best option physically is going to be a low-tier Becky. So, as a sub-average male, would you rather settle down with a low-tier Becky who has peak physical attraction to you, or a girl between high-tier Becky and Stacy who sees you from more of a cutesy comfort perspective? I'm not saying either answer is the right one, and I will never be faced with such a question as I'm not on the left side of the looks purgatory zone, but for guys who are, they would probably consider getting with the girl out of their league to be a no-brainer, even if they end up sacrificing their dignity in the process. This takes me on to the next point, which is the behavior aspect of this theory, aka behavior purgatory. For sub-average males, it's likely that they developed a willingness to sacrifice their dignity if it meant they could receive affection from people who they seen as superior to them. Guys who are in looks purgatory, however, usually have a base level of self-respect as a result of their looks, and also due to having a mindset of ambition where they feel they should be able to experience Chad treatment in this lifetime and don't want to settle for less. It is the typical mindset of a man in looks purgatory that stops him from being a doormat, which exudes the energy to girls that he could never be a secure option in a relationship. So guys in looks purgatory don't just fall into relationships simply by existing the same way that sub-average males do. Guys in looks purgatory tend to have similar mindsets to Chads, whereby they feel they deserve king treatment from girls, but they don't have the looks level to receive that treatment to the same extent that Chads and Chadlites do. Sub-average males, on the other hand, tend to be grateful for anything they can get, and don't feel entitled to king treatment from girls, and are more likely to adopt a mindset where they are the one worshipping any girl who throws them a bone, which men in looks purgatory often have too much pride to do. I am by no means saying that it is better to be a sub-average male with a lack of self-respect than a high-tier normie in looks purgatory who has self-respect and ambition. I am merely pointing out that the sub-average male has the luxury of being able to find a relationship with a girl who is far beyond his looks level, while the high-tier normie won't tend to have that same luxury. You might say that the sub-average male is only getting a relationship with a girl who's out of his league, after that girl has slept around with Chads and realized that she can't get a Chad to commit, so she flips her objectives entirely and goes for a guy who she can control and guarantee commitment from. While that will obviously happen, the girls who do that tend to go for guys around their own looks level who just happen to have a beta and cuck nature. The girls who go for sub-average males way below their looks level are actually often girls with the high-quality, non-primitive archetype. These girls are often modest with sweet personalities and would rather find a timid male who they can trust like a best friend rather than run the risk of having their heart broken. This makes it all the more brutal, knowing that we live in a society where the best-looking girls with the best personalities are likely to end up with some ambitiousless low-tier normie who has never spent a moment of his life considering gym selling or improving himself in any way. He just displayed the behavior and appearance of a timid guy and some good-looking girl with a pleasant personality, seen him as being the best fit for her. I once stayed in an Airbnb for 2 weeks, and I seen 3 couples staying in the B&B that met this exact description, where the girls were all high-tier Beckys to Stacy light, while the guys were all below average facially, below average height, and they all looked nerdy, weak, and unkept, but they were reserved and polite. Even if it was a case where a high-tier normie had an identical personality to these nerds, it wouldn't work to get them attractive girlfriends like the nerds have, because when you're above average in physical metrics, you are expected to have a minimum level of extroversion and social competence. So being reserved or timid just makes people think you must have some severe problems in order to end up like that, despite your looks. But the nerd gets a pass for being timid, as it's congruent with his looks. So what options does a man who's stuck in looks purgatory have? Taking a high-tier normie, he can dedicate a huge amount of his time to slaying, where he should slay majority mid-tier Beckys with some low-tier Beckys, if he's dumpster diving, and an occasional high-tier Becky. He can then try convert a high-tier Becky slay into a fuck buddy situation, and then a relationship which would probably be the main route for a high-tier normie to get a relationship with his looks match. If he is lucky, he may manage a Stacy-Light slay at some point in his life, but this will be harder to convert to a relationship because the Stacy-Light will feel like she has given the high-tier normie too much power by beginning things with a casual sex slay, so she won't have the level of power she will want in the relationship. At the end of the day, not many people have a preference for their relationships starting from a hookup or casual sex, so the high-tier normie will likely be chasing slays that he doesn't want to pursue further afterwards. As far as things go for the mid-tier normies in looks purgatory, I don't know what to tell them, because they're in the position where mid-tier Becky slays will be hard to come by, and they may have to resort to low-tier Beckys for any level of consistent casual sex which is barely worth it. Their best bet is to just run numbers game and try luck out with a mid-tier Becky LTR somehow, but again, they may not be the one they want if it comes through a casual hookup. When I've gone to certain concerts or been around college campuses, it's the slightly above-average guys who make an effort to looksmax, who are the least likely to be seen with girls and instead just hang around with other guys or by themselves, whereas it's the sub-average men who are unlooksmaxed and nerdy and non-threatening who are more likely to be walking with a girl. It is almost as if guys in looks purgatory, who are trying to compete in the open dating market, where the winner takes all, are punished by girls for falling short of the top spot, which is occupied by Chadlights and Chads. Guys in looks purgatory are punished for failing, whereas the sub-average male who never tried to compete in the first place didn't fail, so he is ironically punished less than the guy in looks purgatory who tried to become a mogger by LMS maxing, but still fell short of Chadlight. At the start of this video, I mentioned how the phenomenon of above-average looking girls dating sub-average guys is becoming more prevalent in recent years, and I'm now going to explain what I believe are the reasons for its increase. When it comes to the dating market in which people attempt to date strangers, the standards for looks has been increasing year on year for at least the past decade. When I say the dating market where people date strangers, I'm referring to people who first make contact with each other online or in a nightlife venue where they don't know each other beforehand and don't share connected friend groups. The problem with these avenues for dating is that there is always going to be a higher bidder LMS-wise, and women have no incentive to give any time to a lower bid, meaning that standards continually increase as the bar gets set higher and higher. This becomes a race to the bottom, as women get desensitized to men of a certain LMS level, so the men on that level have to dip down and go for the girls a level below, and this cycle repeats over and over again. Almost every girl in uni who has a public Instagram profile and a few hundred followers has been DM'd by a professional sports player or reality TV show contestant at some point, so they no longer believe there's a bracket of guys who are out of reach for them to have a one-night stand with. So when there's no challenge involved, the amount of validation they'll get from it won't be particularly high. I believe we have now gotten to a point where the LMS of the men in the market cannot keep up with the rise in standards, meaning that the market for dating strangers has to implode, and I believe that is what we're seeing now as dating apps users and revenues are down compared to previous years, and men are starting to realize that the effort is not worth it. This would mean that dating to find a partner is turning away from nightlife and online, and it is turning back towards social circle and familiar settings like school and work. These avenues have always been king for finding relationships, but there was a time when nightlife and online dating could work for finding relationships for a decent portion of men, which is no longer the case. I've seen videos of old cells from my country speaking about going to dance halls and discos in the 70s to meet the opposite sex, with the intent being that they would meet a stranger who they would end up dating and marrying. This shows that the intent of socializing in nightlife used to be to find a relationship with the goal of ultimately leading to marriage. Several people I know have parents who first met as strangers through the nightlife environment in the 80s, and it actually seemed to be the meta for finding someone to marry at the time, whereas now it seems to be a common take among Zoomers that you won't find anyone worth having a relationship with in a nightlife environment, and going out is just for the sake of getting drunk and maybe a one-night stand, which is also becoming less common. As settings for meeting strangers are no longer an effective tactic for finding an LTR, And it seems LTRs are nearly all starting through familiar settings, such as social circle, work or school. Women are much less harsh in their look standards when it comes to giving a chance to a man who they're familiar with, since they have a smaller pool of guys in these settings compared to nightlife and online, and they can also develop an interest in less attractive men with repeated exposure to them. The reason for this is that they subconsciously think that some average normie will stick around after sex and help raise the potential child if he gets her pregnant, because she sees him often enough that she associates him with being a permanent part of her tribe who won't smash and dash. When coupling up is done through smaller pools of potential partners through proximity game, women are far more likely to choose a guy on the left side of the looks purgatory zone, because they can become accustomed to the looks of a sub-average male over time before they decide that they should give him a chance as their safe bet LTR, who they expect would never leave them. If you look at videos recorded by people walking through Western cities, or just go outside yourself, you will see plenty of guys who are average and below average with girls that are higher than them on the looks scale. If hypergamy was as legit as people claim it is, then this shouldn't happen. But the truth is, women are willing to partner up with a guy below them in looks for an LTR, the same way that men are willing to slay a girl below them in looks for a one-night stand. I wish hypergamy was strong enough so that there was a uniform agreement between girls to never date a man who was sub-high-tier normie, because then the competition for girls would reduce drastically, and high-tier normies wouldn't be trapped in looks purgatory. If you are a tall mogger, there are statistically very few guys who mog you, so it's not the guys who mog you that you have to worry about preventing you from finding a date. It's the hordes of sub-average guys you have to worry about competing with, as they can cheat their genetics and secure an attractive girl who you'd have been happy to date. To conclude this video, I have yet to find a formula for people to escape looks purgatory. And for those in looks purgatory who see chasing a mid-tier Becky Slay as a pointless endeavor, then there aren't many avenues left if you have no social circle to meet girls, aside from trying to ascend via status maxing, which I will speak about in a future video.